Just before sunrise, something lit up the Iranian sky. A sudden flash, then another. Within seconds, massive fireballs erupted across a sprawling oil complex in southern Iran. Storage tanks exploded, pipelines ruptured, flames shot hundreds of feet into the air. Satellite images soon confirmed what many feared. The facility had been struck by American weapons. The order came from the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Within minutes, global markets reacted. Oil prices surged. Military bases across the Middle East went on high alert, and Iran declared the attack an act of war. The operation happened fast. According to early reports, U.S. forces launched precision-guided strikes against a major Iranian oil processing facility. The complex was part of the network controlled by the National Iranian Oil Company, the state-owned giant responsible for managing Iran's vast petroleum industry. Oil flows through these facilities before being shipped across the world. Destroying them can cripple production overnight. Military analysts say the attack was carefully planned. The targets appear to have included storage tanks, refining equipment, and pipeline infrastructure. By hitting these points, a relatively small strike can create enormous disruption. Within hours, images began circulating online, showing thick black smoke pouring into the sky. Emergency crews raced to control the fires, but the damage had already been done. Oil isn't just fuel. For countries like Iran, it's economic lifeblood. Iran possesses some of the largest oil reserves on Earth. Energy exports help fund everything from public services to military programs. That means oil infrastructure becomes a strategic target during conflict. If production slows or exports stop, the government loses billions in revenue, and that pressure can weaken a country's ability to sustain military operations. Strategists sometimes call this economic warfare. Instead of targeting cities or troops directly, strikes focus on the systems that keep a nation functioning. In the weeks before the strike, President Donald Trump repeatedly warned Iran against escalating tensions. Speaking to reporters, he said, "If Iran threatens the United States, they will face consequences the likes of which few have ever seen." Trump has long taken a hard line toward Tehran. During previous disputes, he issued blunt warnings on social media and in public speeches. At one point, he famously told Iran, "Never ever threaten the United States again." Supporters say this tough rhetoric deters aggression. Critics argue it risks pushing conflict toward escalation. The strike on Iran's oil facility appears to be the strongest military move yet. One reason the strike is sending shockwaves through global markets is geography. Iran sits next to one of the most important energy corridors on the planet, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. Every day, millions of barrels of oil pass through this strait on massive tanker ships. In fact, nearly 1/5 of the world's oil supply travels through this route. That makes the region incredibly sensitive to conflict. If the strait becomes unsafe for shipping, global energy prices can skyrocket, and that possibility alone is enough to rattle markets. Iran's government reacted quickly. Officials condemned the strike and promised retaliation. State media described the attack as an assault on the nation's sovereignty. Iran's military has multiple options if it chooses to respond. It could launch missile attacks on US bases across the Middle East. It could target the infrastructure of American allies. Or it could disrupt shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran also maintains relationships with armed groups across the region. Those groups operate in places like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, and in a crisis they could become part of a wider conflict. To understand why tensions run so deep, we have to go back decades. The turning point came during the Iranian Revolution of 1979. That uprising overthrew Iran's monarchy and established a new Islamic government. Soon after, Iranian militants seized the United States Embassy in Tehran. American diplomats were held hostage for 444 days in what became known as the Iran hostage crisis. The crisis shocked the world and permanently damaged relations between the two countries. Since then, the United States and Iran have clashed repeatedly through sanctions, proxy wars, and covert operations. For years, the conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran has played out in the shadows. Cyber attacks, sabotage, and covert strikes have all been part of the struggle. One famous example was the Stuxnet cyber weapon, a computer virus believed to have targeted Iran's nuclear facilities. It quietly destroyed centrifuges used in uranium enrichment. The attack showed how modern warfare could target infrastructure without traditional bombs. But the recent strike on Iran's oil facility represents something very different. This was not covert. It was visible, explosive, and impossible to ignore. The biggest question now is what comes next. History shows that military confrontations can escalate rapidly once both sides begin retaliating. If Iran launches attacks against US forces or allies, Washington could respond with additional strikes, and that could trigger a cycle of escalation. Some analysts warn that such a conflict could spread across multiple countries in the Middle East. Others believe both sides may try to avoid a full-scale war. Governments around the world are watching closely. Diplomats are urging restraint, energy markets are bracing for further disruption, and military commanders are preparing for the possibility of escalation. The strike on Iran's oil infrastructure has already changed the strategic landscape. What happens next will depend on the decisions made in Washington and Tehran. For now, one thing is certain. The flames burning in Iran's oil fields represent more than just damaged infrastructure. They represent a moment of extreme tension between two powerful nations. A moment that could either fade into history or ignite something much larger. And as the smoke rises into the desert sky, the world waits to see what happens next. Hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. Share your thoughts below. What do you think Trump's next move will be? Thanks for tuning in to Global Chessboard.